I'd like to share an experience I had with a game of Team Fortress 2. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday. I think 2 weeks ago. I had decided to play a multiplayer match on Tf2. I signed on and started up the automatic server selection for play modes. I felt like playing capture the flag, so I selected the option. My computer lagged a bit while it was searching for a new server, which isn't abnormal for me since my laptop isn't fairly distant from my router. Which is abnormal for me because my laptop's fairly close to my router. But eventually I found one. I've been playing TF2 since a little after it became free, so I don't have a very big server history, nor experience with server mods or server in general. But something seemed rather odd about this particular server. Once I gained access to the server and its loading screen came up with the bar at the bottom top, as the bar got to about 70, it turned a bit backwards and paused. It started to go back and forth from 45 to 60. The game froze after a few moments, and I decided to force quit the game. I went to eat something and came back to a game started up, and I decided to play it from my server history. I noticed a new server added to the list. TF played at 9:05 or something along that line. After the events, I'm about to explain the server's disappearance from my list, so I'm blowing on plain memory here. I tried the server similar to before. The loading bar jittered a bit, however, I managed to complete it this time. You see, when you enter a custom map, there will be some sort of splash page to welcome you to the server and an advertisement, the site to briefly explain the rules. In this server, the entire splash page was black. There was nothing on it. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card with all the strange things happening, but I decided to go on. The game loaded. I selected Pyro as my class and entered 2 Fort. For those of you who had never played Team Fortress 2, here's a brief explanation. It's a team-based online multiplayer FPS game, and in particular capture the flag mode in 2 Fort. You two fairly large build objects is to obviously capture the opponent's flags and return it to your base. For the server, there were 2 teams of 6. Upon my joining, both teams became full. The game was already mid-progress and everything was working normally. Our team, that was blue, had already scored 1 point and we needed 2 more to win the game. Red team had 0. This particular game didn't have a time limit and seemed to go back and forth with 14 with little or no progress. Occasionally members from the other team would type angry messages to opposing teams, accusing them of being cheap by having like 4 engineers in their flag guard room with turrets, making it almost impossible to get their flag, making the game seem endless. Up till now, things have been relatively normal until I started noticing above 5 minutes I've been going around the level I'd not seen one of my team members, nor any other player from the other team. People were still talking, however, so it kind of took a while for it to sink in that I have not seen anyone for over 5 minutes. I thought there had to be some sort of lag problem, so I asked the other players if they were having the same issues, and the general response was nope. But one player said they hadn't seen me for a bit either. For about 6 minutes, passed, and I started to go pretty bored. I decided to make it one more round throughout the level before I could find another server. I left our fort and fell into a lagoon in the middle of and proceeded to enter the red team's pipe network. After a little while, the underground base in the middle of the tunnel, there was a really long pipe that led into a staircase up into the base at the end. I noticed the enemy scout was standing there, wasn't moving, just standing there with a bat staring at me. A strange form of relief swept over me that the game started to work again. and I charged and began to shoot with my flare gun. The shots went right through him. As I approached him, he disappeared completely. Really bad lag, I thought to myself. I ascended the stairs, and as I entered the base, a strange static sound could be hearing started to replace the other game sounds. Made my way throughout their base, and as I got closer to the flag room, the static got louder and louder until I couldn't hear anything in the game other than that. This is where things start to get weird. I asked anyone if they heard the static, and I did not receive any reply. No one had said a word since I saw the enemy scout in the pipe tunnel. I managed to get to the room adjacent to the flag room, and I could hear some sort of murmuring behind the static. As I went down one of the halls, turned the corner, I noticed there was no flag room. It was just plain black, like the hall leading to a game void, or all the textures and lightings were reduced to 100% black. I shot a couple times, and my bullets landed as if there were walls, so I entered the room anyways. I saw a flag and picked it up, and when I turned around, there was no halls. Everything was black. The UI was messed up on the screen. It said I had the flag, but nothing in the level, and all traces of the level disappeared. I tried to get an answer from after explaining my problem. No response. I stood in the room for about 3 minutes. All of a sudden the game froze and the game ended, but the message didn't say anyone lost or won. The announcer voice was all distorted. The scoreboard was broken. The loading screen quickly came up and it said downloading play dead 009 or something along that line. It took about 17 minutes to download. It was a really big file. When it was finished, the black server screen came up again, and I thought the screen had selected spy. The level loaded to something completely undescribable. I tried to save the screenshot, but every picture I tried said error, and the print screen didn't work. The level looked rather black and very glitchy. The textures on the walls were kinda 8-bit blocks, but really distorted. It was almost like a 3D version of static still on the TV screen. I went through the level asking what is this map, but there was no response. I checked the player list and many others. Everyone was replaced with I am dead 1, I am dead 2, etc. I never encountered anything like this before other than some pranks. Other than some prank games people made for the fun and hacks along the lines of Majora's Mask 1. But this online game, when I had thought secure servers, I decided to give it a few more minutes and explore the level, which was a really large map of oddly shaped tunnels. Also, there was no sound effect whatsoever. Nothing I did caused a sound. I eventually came up to a really long tunnel, what I imagined was the middle of the level. The tunnel had darkness at the end, and it decided to turn around and go back, and thinking the map was glitching. And the moment I turned my camera around, I saw the enemy scout I saw earlier, except something was very wrong. His eyes were black, his left arm was rather deformed and bent in indiscriminate possible directions. His leg reminded me of some type of crab, and I almost jumped out of my seat and said, "What the fuck is going on?" Hurried into the chat log, but there was no response. I stood there and stared down at the strange scout. After several minutes, the other players started talking about all that appeared was corrupt garbage text. The scout quickly approached me in a sudden, not irregular fashion, and I heard a very loud burst of statics. And all of a sudden it kicked me out of the server. I went and checked the server. It had been gone from my history. Naturally, I immediately shut off the game and haven't played it since. I think it was some type of prank, but it was pretty creepy, and game hacks don't usually creep me out. Update, July 13, 2011. After posting this, I decided to play the game in bed. I went into my history and found a King of the Hill map, but I noticed that it said TF, CTF Playdead was black. but it had 0 to 60 players. I went on the server and unlike before, it was loaded completely normal with no issues. It was true form, like I entered, but there was no other players on the server. Nothing seemed to really out of place, and I walked around the map for a while, finding nothing. The only thing I noticed was I could hear a sound effect glitching out now every now and then. When selecting the character, there were static noises, and that kept on repeating. And when I went into the tunnel area, I thought I heard footsteps. I shut down the game a few minutes later, and I will try it again another time. Maybe I'll be able to get some footage.